Turning now to politics, it was not easy, but the deal is done. Republicans and Democrats finding contentious compromise, passing the debt ceiling deal. The deal displayed, though, deep divides in both parties, with the far right saying the cuts were not steep enough, the progressive left saying they went way too far. Here to break it all down for us is Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Giselle. Happy almost Friday.
We're feeling it. So the deal is done. It passes the House with 165 Democrats and 149 Republicans voting in favor. All indications are it will pass the Senate, but many on both sides are angry they didn't get everything they wanted. Break down for us the deal. Who compromised most?
Well, I think the very fact that we are discussing this means that Republicans had a win here, right? They essentially held the debt ceiling process hostage in order to get what I think is a really kind of moderate number of cuts. So if you haven't been paying student loans, you'll be paying those again. If you're on public assistance, there will be a work requirement now that goes up to age 54, up from 49. We have a flat spending on non-defense for the next 2 years. Those are the big wins. And as you can see, they're pretty moderate. So at the end of the day, Republicans definitely won, but not much.
Yeah, but Republican Congressman Chip Kelly is calling the deal a turd sandwich. But Speaker McCarthy touts the deal as the largest spending cuts ever. First, is he right? And is his speakership then, if you say he has a win here, safe?
I think his speakership is safe. I think this is a lot of grandstanding. So Chip Roy is really speaking to his constituents in Texas. For folks who don't follow politics day to day, oftentimes these deals are cut. It doesn't change the outcome, but certain members will be voting no. They'll be allowed to vote no from their party leadership, and then they'll go in front of cameras and use colorful language like turd. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing a lot of grandstanding, but at the end of the day, we knew this deal would be cut and it'll go through the Senate. And that's not really in question at this point.
In this day and age, that mild term turd is mild. All right, so progressives, they think President Biden gave up too much, especially angry over the work requirements for the poor. We're even told that Joe Manchin may get his gas pipeline, but in the end, many pundits believe this will flush out and it won't move the needle much. What do you think?
I think anytime Democrats and Republicans are upset about a bill, it means, hey, the process is working. That is compromise. I think this is a big win for centrists who actually dominate the House of Representatives. The extremists dominate the headlines, but this is the way the process is supposed to work.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it. All right, another bombshell report to ask you about. The DOJ has audio recordings of former President Trump openly discussing a classified document he took to Mar-a-Lago and a possible attack on Iran. The recording suggests that Trump knew these materials were classified. How significant?
Yeah, it's very significant. It indicates intent. It indicates that Trump not only knew about the declassification process, even though he's claimed he can declassify in his brain, he knew that's not true. It also indicates that he knew he had classified documents after leaving the White House. So this is a very significant audio leak, and it adds to the documents that Jack Smith received last month confirming that Trump was aware of the declassification process.
So does this strengthen his case? Is this the smoking gun he needed?
Absolutely. I would be shocked if there aren't charges coming from Jack Smith, given the evidence in front of him.
All right, Chris Christie, Mike Pence reportedly throwing their hat soon into the presidential race this week. But right now, Governor DeSantis seems to be Trump's main challenger, and he's aggressively attacking the former president on his record, the economy, COVID. Talk about this shift in DeSantis' strategy here, and will it work with the base?
Well, it's hard to say. Trump has really high brand loyalty, and DeSantis got into the race and thought, I think, initially that he could subtly make the case that he is just as conservative or extreme as Trump, but he is calmer. He's not going to be as erratic. That didn't work. Trump is outpolling him 2-1, and now he's going for the jugular. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be really difficult to take down Trump as the Republican nominee, given his popularity and the fact that anytime you attack him, he uses it to his advantage. But at the end of the day, we have 77 weeks left to determine who will be our next president.
And the field getting even more crowded, like 2016. All right, I want to ask you about the technological, interference in elections and how this impacts the outcome. The former president and his son have been attacking DeSantis using AI-generated content. The content is, this one is particularly silly, but it shows you about the possibility of what deepfakes can do. Take a look.
Make one tiny mistake, you're dead. I made one tiny mistake. I wore woman's clothes.
Okay, that is silly content, of course, but that looks like DeSantis. It sounds like DeSantis. What do you make of this? And more important, what does this imply for the future of campaigning and who the American electorate can trust?
Well, Giselle, it's a troubling trend. It's a major threat to democracy. Now, obviously, this is the more obvious part of how AI is being used, but we know that there was Russian and other interference in the 2016 election, both in terms of content, video content, infographics, fake information. And now that's on steroids because AI can replicate it. You don't just need somebody at a laptop creating that content. You can now create that content 100,000 times over. So it's very troubling. And we can laugh at that, but it's no laughing matter when it comes to disinformation.
Oh, I think it's very frightening. All right, the Republican-led Texas House impeaches Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton for fraud allegations. Now, Paxton, as you know, is a Trump loyalist that led efforts to overturn the election results in 4 key swing states. But despite this close tie with Trump, Republicans ousted him. Is his impeachment a bellwether? Is the GOP possibly shifting away from Trump?
I don't think so. I think this is more about Texas politics. Paxton has had allegations and lawsuits for many years. So I think one of two things happened. Either the evidence in this case is so strong that there's no way the Republican Party can protect him, which I think is likely, or he went up against somebody or he disaffected somebody in the party and now they're going after him. Either way, I don't think this says much about Trump. I think it's more about Texas politics.
All right. The Oklahoma Supreme Court strikes down 2 abortion bans as unconstitutional again. Is this a bellwether or an outlier? Are we going to see more challenges by states over overturning Roe by a very unpopular high court?
I think so. States' Supreme Courts are the new battleground for Roe. And of course, a lot of these cases will ultimately get back up to the Supreme Court. We've seen this in other states, Michigan, Ohio. It's important to keep in mind that while this particular case did protect abortion rights, folks in that state are still, it's almost impossible to get an abortion because they have a 1910 abortion law in place. But yes, this is definitely a battleground where legislatures are trying to limit abortion and the courts are protecting abortion rights.
All right, before I let you go, in Japan, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin made a stunning statement, Caroline, saying China has failed to respond to dozens of requests for military dialogue. And this comes after a Chinese and American fighter jet came very close to each other over the South China Seas. How dangerous is this lack of communication?
Well, diplomacy obviously is a primary tool in making sure that our competition with China doesn't become conflict. I think this particular case is much more the case of General Li, who's just come into power in China, trying to make a strong stand as he's early on the job. I don't think this reflects an overall breakdown in diplomacy, but of course, the China-U.S. relations will dominate geopolitics for the coming decades as two superpowers are emergent, or China is emergent as a superpower. We've been one for a long time. But experts, it's a complicated topic, but experts say at the end of the day, the sheer volume of trade between our countries means that diplomacy will not go away.
I love digging into all these issues with you. I could spend an hour. Caroline Heldman, thank you so very much for lending us your expertise once again on this Thursday.
Thank you, Giselle.